Darkness kills, destroys the will. Find a spark, make hearts thrill. Hear the tales of time so grim. Shine a light, don't let it dim. Heather Brown, downtown, bound. True crime story she's found. In the shadows, secret stay. Need a light that finds the way.
Welcome back to another episode of Defeating the Darkness, True Crime Stories with Downtown Heather Brown. That's me, your host. I'm a former homicide and sexual assault prosecutor. And today I have a very, very special guest, Jolene. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm really excited because I actually don't know that much about you, and I'm super excited and eager to learn about you and hear all the amazing things that you're doing, and I'll hopefully impart some wisdom and some knowledge based on your experiences and what you've been through. And I'm going to let you tell that story, but Jolene is with us, and you and I met at an event that supports survivors of human trafficking. And we met a few years ago, and I always just thought, oh my God, she's so pretty. She looks just like Katy Perry. And you were always so happy and pleasant. And then this past Christmas season, we got a chance to talk more. And I invited you to come on the podcast and talk about your experience and all the great things you're doing in the community. So with that being said, I'm going to shut up and actually listen and hear what you have to say. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Jolene. I'm almost 40.
I don't believe you.
I have a child that's in college now. I grew up in a really small town in Northern California, just outside the Bay Area, like a agricultural town, Turlock, California. So there's a university there, but very rural area. I would say, like, I tell people I grew up in the Bay Area because it's just Bay Area culture. It's not too far from the Oakland. So very secluded, not like in the know type of things, you know. Also, I did not grow up with social media or computers. The internet was invented when I was an adolescent.
I'm with you. I got like 15 years on you, babe. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
So when we talk about prevention and exposure and that kind of a thing later on, we're in a different world now, right? So I grew up in a small town. My mother was a nurse. My father worked in agriculture and foster farms and whatnot. Grew up in a kind of a dysfunctional household. Both of my parents struggled with their mental health, I would say. I was troubled all through school. They put me on medication when I was 9 years old. I started taking ADD medication and medication for depression. And I think I just was like labeled kind of
early on,
dysfunctional early on, right? If I had lived in a bigger city, I probably would have been exposed to more things. But I started running away from home probably about 12, 13 years old. By 14, I was in the juvenile justice system and in and out of juvenile hall from 14 until 18. I did play sports here and there. I mostly lived in the shadows of my older brother and his athletics. And I had a younger sister who's 6 years younger than me as well. So at 18 years old, my mom put me out. I came to Southern California to try to stay with some family members. And I guess my thought of what was happening and their thought what was happening didn't align. Anyway, I met my first pimp at Union Station when I was 18 years old.
And is that in downtown LA?
Uh-huh. At the Amtrak station in downtown LA.
And if I may, I might interrupt every now and again and get the details because I love the details of the backstory. What were you doing at the train station?
I was going back home. So I came out here to try and stay with some family, thinking I could go to school or kind of have a fresh start, be, in a supportive environment. So I was going back home. I was staying with some friends at the time. And he's like, hey, get off the train with me in Fresno. Come and smoke some weed with me. It'll be cool. And I just thought like, oh, I still have my ticket like from Fresno to Turlock. Like if anything happens, I'll just get back on the train and I'll be okay. We didn't have cell phones back then either. So I got off the train with him, and the next day I found myself working the Blade, the track, in Fresno. At the time, like the only thing I knew about a pimp and a hoe was like songs and music and what we saw on TV and like Too Short and Bay Area culture, right? And like Magic Don Juan and things like this. I'd never seen a Blade in real life. I'd never seen prostitution in real life, not that I was aware of.
What is a Blade? Tell our listeners.
So a Blade is, or a track is a strip, a street where girls stand on the corners or stand out on the streets and solicit men for sex. Essentially, like men know that of these known areas here in LA, Figueroa or Harbor Boulevard would be like our go-to places, right?
Yeah, here in Orange County.
In Orange County and in Los Angeles. So there's several Blades in Fresno. I was 18 years old at the time. I robbed every single trick I had because I could not like do the sexual act. So I really was putting myself in really dangerous situations. I did not want to be there. I didn't know how to get myself out. I attempted to leave and he was like, hey, let's go to Vegas for the weekend. Like I'm still so naive thinking I'm going to go like on a romantic getaway or something to Vegas, right? And then that's when the physical abuse began. I left Vegas when I was 20 years old. I had been arrested 5 times, and I was pregnant with my daughter. I kind of left with whatever I could carry. He came and found me. And he was there when my daughter was born. He wanted me to give birth to my daughter. He wanted to have a child with me. It was a very difficult situation for me because I knew that would then tie me to him for the rest of my life and essentially my daughter's. So he ended up going to prison when she was about 8 months old. I did not really work as a prostitute after she was born for quite some time. He went to prison. I enrolled in school. I had started working at a dual diagnosis facility where I was working with on the suicide hotline, taking crisis calls. And at that time, the word trafficking, human trafficking prevention, women that had been trafficked, it wasn't something people talked about. I was a prostitute. I was a victim of domestic violence. Like those were things that identified me. And there was no help. There was no resources. There was no groups. There was no legal prevention or protection.
Aftercare programs, unheard of.
Unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. And if they were really focusing on minors. And still to this day, we really focus on minors. We don't think about this 17-year-old is going to be 21 in a couple of years and she's not going to get out of life until she's 21. So when she exits, she's 21 and now there's no resources for her, right? So I was working, I was going to school. I decided I wanted to start dating again and I met somebody online and he ended up being a pimp. I could tell that he was a pimp. He wasn't like... trafficking or pimping and pandering involves force, fraud, and coercion. And I would say 75% or more of trafficking, pimping happens with coercion. A lot of it isn't like you're coming and getting kidnapped and taken out of your street. You have a gun to your head and you're forced into this. There are those stories, and it is extreme. But I would say a lot of it comes with coercion and low self-esteem for women. When we don't believe in ourselves and we don't love ourselves, we don't have people around us building us up. These men,
They prey on those vulnerabilities.
yes. And so even as a mother, I knew like the most important thing as a mother raising a daughter, the most important thing for me was to make sure that I raised a child that loved herself, believed in herself, and had self-confidence.
I want to just kind of do a little deep dive into that, what you're talking about, like the coercion. So can you just give our listeners just an idea of what that looks like? What does that sound like to a young girl who has a troubled home life, who possibly struggles with anxiety, depression, low self-esteem?
Yeah, absolutely. Just simple things like, you're beautiful. Let me take you out. You look so nice. Buying you things, treating you to nice dinners, to nice outfits, to nice clothes, nice cars.
They call those Romeo pimps. They make you fall in love with them and the idea of what the lifestyle that they're selling you.
Yes, absolutely. Excuse me. I would say a Romeo pimp is more tries to be your boyfriend. And essentially in the beginning, that's what happened.
And then somewhere along the line, it turns to...
And even though I was the one that's like, okay, I see what you're doing. What's going on? Show me what's happening, right? I really, truly believed, and I really, truly believe lots of women believe this. I was giving him the money I was making, and he was putting it up, and he was going to save it, and we were going to have a better life. When I went back into the life, I was a single mom. I was in college. I was working a job for $9 an hour at night. And I really thought that I was going to be providing my child a better life. I truly did when I got back into to the life. And so, the first day I worked, he exposed me to the internet. This was 2010. So... probably 2009, actually. He exposed me to the internet, which was a whole new ball game, very discreet. Once prostitution got onto the internet, it made it easier not only for women to be trafficked and sell sex, but for men to buy and not be seen. Now you don't have to drive down a blade and you don't have to risk somebody watching you. You can go meet with somebody discreetly in a hotel room and nobody has to know. So, the first day I made $1,000. Wow. And I'm like, I'm going to quit
And that's
my
in
job.
2009.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And this was without any professional pictures, without a website, without any real reputation or background. Marketing, right? And it only went up from there, right? So, why am I working? And why am I working this job?
For $9 an hour.
Job. And he has a relationship with the Lord. He came from a good family. He came from an educated family, but also grew up in the Bay Area. So pimp culture, it was a thing. I think now it's very different, but there was some security in almost like in you're joining a gang, right? You're on this team, you're with this guy, it's security, it's safety, this is what we do. It's almost like a badge of honor or respect. This is my pimp, I'm his girl, I make this amount of money. It's not all bruises and battered and eating cup of noodles life, right? I lived a life while I was in the sex industry that I can still not provide for my child today.
To this day.
5-star restaurants, on a flight every week, nice clothes, nice things in my home, In fact, when I left the life, my daughter was about 7 years old. It was a really difficult thing for me. I had to tell her, like, we're going into a store. It really hurts me to tell you no. Please don't ask me for anything, you know? So going from making $1,000 or $2,000 a day to exiting the life and making minimum wage, $12 an hour, $10 an hour, is I think what keeps a lot of people in the life. Knowing you can turn a day and make $200 to $1,000 off of one person, and you won't even make $1,000 in 2 weeks. I think that was one of the hardest transitions for me when I left the life.
Can I ask you something? I think the listeners are probably dying to know, because, and maybe this is a falsehood that we're told, but I know you were going to nice restaurants and the clothes and stuff. Were you like, was there a bank account with all this money in it for you to buy a house and to provide this future for your daughter? Or was your pimp taking your money?
There was a bank account somewhere,
But
somehow, but I didn't have access to it. Whatever I made, I would, like, if my quota was $1,000 or $1,500, like whatever I would make over that, I'd save, or I'd put away, or I'd go shopping. I was so scared to stack money until the end, when I was trying to leave, that I just didn't. Like, I literally, the fear, and he never put hands on me. Like, literally, the coercion and the mind control was so much more difficult than the physical abuse to heal from and to just function. So I started going to the East Coast. I started making a lot of money. I left my daughter with my mom. And I know that caused a lot of trauma for her. And then eventually, I actually, when I tried to leave, and I would post ads, because now this is almost 10 years of my life that I've been a prostitute. So even though I know I had a lot of skill set in my mind, this is what God created me to do. God created me beautiful. He created me with a voluptuous body. Like, I believe God created me to be used for sex. And that was what I had. That was my skill set. So I would try to leave him. And when I would try to post ads, like, he would harass me, and I would either have to find a new pimp to get him to leave me alone, or try to go somewhere that he had never taken me, so that I could make money. I knew that I needed to stack money so that I could heal, so I could figure out what was next in my life. That time I was 27 years old. Went to an Easter service. I grew up in church. I grew up in an Episcopal church.
I'm Episcopalian.
Yeah. So,
In common.
yeah. So, as you know, it's a religion. Episcopalian is a religion. It's not a relationship. So even though I could recite all the prayers and all the hymns and did all the things, I could recite church service from the beginning to the end, I didn't know a relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have a relationship. I wasn't taught a relationship with God. But needless to say, we went to church Easter Sunday. And my daughter looked at me and she said, "Mom, I don't want you to leave me anymore." She was in second grade. About the time that they start saying, "Oh, what does your mom do for a living? And what do you do?" So I just decided I'm not going to leave anymore. Like, I knew things weren't working out with him. At that point, I knew, like, all the money I had saved and everything that I had been through, like, was not existent. He had got sick probably about 6 months prior and had a stroke. And I didn't work after that in the sex industry. And there was nothing left at that time. Like,
No
that's
money.
when I realized, like, there's no money.
This was all for nothing.
Everything that we had was in his name. And at that point in time, we were both living in my Section 8 apartment. And I wasn't the only girl. There was times where there was 5 or 6 or 2 or 3. Like, I was never the only girl either. So he wasn't just making money off of me. And to this day, I could not tell you what he did with that money.
I was just going to ask, what was he doing with all this money?
I
mean, if you're
going
making
out
over
to try to
$1,000
find more girls,
bucks
I
a
have
day.
no idea. I know his expenses were high. I had my own place. I had Section 8. So my rent was like $30 or I think 150 at most. My car had ended up getting towed because he didn't pay the registration, and then he didn't feel like I needed a car, so he had 4 cars. I didn't have any.
What were his expenses? 4 cars? Who needs 4 cars? You can only drive one at a time.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that he had a condo. I thought he owned it when I met him, but I think he was just renting it. But needless to say, I left with nothing. And like the rule of the game on the streets, like they say, you come with what you you leave with what you came with. And that's nothing. Most girls come with nothing. Most girls get with a pimp to level them up, to obtain things, right? So there was even a time he went into my apartment and took all my TVs and my nice clothes and things, purses. It didn't bother me because I had left before with the clothes on my back. So I knew that I would get it back. I just had faith that I would. But from that day, I didn't leave my daughter. I still used the sex industry to make money for about another year or so. But I became very disconnected and very embarrassed and very scared that like somebody in the community was going to find out. My daughter was raised in a very small upper class neighborhood, which has been a double-edged sword. So she's been exposed to the best of both worlds. So I would always feel like the moms knew I was a prostitute and the dads were buyers. And buyers is a whole nother topic that I would love to dig down deep into with you.
Oh, yeah.
So anyhow, I left the life. We went to a church service and I heard something in that service that just kept me coming back. The way that Pastor Rick preached is kind of like a college lecture. You have to take your notes and like you leave with something tangible to apply to your life. And I will say that the children's ministry at Saddleback Church is what started my healing and started my faith, because they do the same thing for the kids. They give the kids tangible items and tangible words, like tools to apply to their life and come back. You come back next week and you memorize your verse and then you're going to get a toy, right? Or you're going to get something, right? A reward in some sense. My daughter would always ask, are we going to go back to church? Are we going to go back to church? Are we going to go next week? And eventually I started serving. When I came to the Lord, we were in Orange County. We were in Huntington Beach. And this was like 2013. I had my hair, my nails, and I was very fancy. I wasn't like looking like I'm on drugs or homeless or anything. I think I drove a Mercedes at the time. And I came, and I remember Pastor Rick having this sermon saying, like, people carry around this backpack with their secrets. I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. I was so desperate for help. I was so desperate for healing. I would tell anybody and everybody, I'm a prostitute and I need help and I'm trying to heal and I don't know how to pick up my life and get my life together. And I probably made everybody in that church feel uncomfortable because I would be like, I used to be a prostitute and blah, blah, blah. And you could not meet me without knowing that I used to be a prostitute. Because if you were going to reject me or turn me down or tell me that I wasn't welcome, I needed you to do that right away. I did not want, I think the trauma of like the coercion and of being really in love with somebody that was something else just made me want to be rejected right away if that's what you were going to do. It made a lot of people uncomfortable. I went to CR one time and I told my story. The pastor called me and he said, well, he basically told me that I made people in the meeting uncomfortable and that I should try to find another group. And he's like, well, they're too far along in the study for you to join. And so I started my own ministry. And at that point in time, I really wanted to work with the youth. I wanted to serve in the ministry and somehow. Because of my criminal background, I wasn't allowed to serve with the children's ministry. But there's an amazing pastor and his wife, Lalo and Liliana Garcia, who really set the foundation of my healing. And they allowed me to serve in the high school ministry. I was able to do the technical stuff. I was in school for radio and television broadcasting. I knew at some point in time I always wanted to be a speaker. I always wanted to share my experience and help motivate people. I thought I would be on radio and television at some point in time, but that didn't work out. But
you should be. You still could be.
You know, if that's the door that God opens, then
you're walking through it.
I am a woman of many hats, and
Did you hear that? Anyone who's listening and would like to have Jolene on radio or television, right?
Absolutely.
I think that you'd be amazing. Okay, I want to hear more. This is so fascinating. I'm so thankful that you're willing to share your story.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many people that aren't willing to have that authentic conversation. And I think your story is fascinating and it's amazing. And I want to hear more. Okay, so
there's definitely multiple layers, right? There's multiple layers.
It's an onion. You got to peel back all the layers because I'm sure you have 1,000 stories and 1,000, nuggets of information.
Yeah, and I think for me, at this point in my life, the most important thing that I share when I'm sharing my story is the journey of exiting the life. How difficult that was, how 12 years later, it's still difficult to be in certain spaces, and the resources, how far we've come in the fight against human trafficking, right?
And how far we have to go.
Exactly. So we started attending church. That's where I really got my foundation in healing.
And when you were just starting in church, were you still in the life? That's what they call it for the listeners.
Yeah, I was smoking weed in the parking lot. I was, my mother worked as a nurse, so she was off a couple of days a week. On her days off, I would take off and I would go turn tricks. I had a customer that bought me a car, and he would fill up my gas tank, pay my car payment, and take me out to dinner every Friday. He didn't want sex from me anymore. Like, we would talk about God, and we would talk about healing. At one point in time, I felt guilty. I told the pastor, like, hey, there's this guy. He told me it was a blessing from God. And he truly was. I said, but I kind of feel guilty, because he pays my car payment and my insurance, and he fills up my gas tank. And, he's like, if he told you it's a blessing from God, then you accept your blessings. He said, at any point in time, if he ever tries to proposition you or make you feel guilty for what he's done for you, then you know that that's not a blessing and he's manipulating you. And I never looked at it like that. And so I received it. And he never did.
He never propositioned you? He never wanted sex?
Never did after that. I think,
he was probably just lonely. It sounds like just a lonely guy.
He was, which a lot of tricks are, right? We call John's customers sex buyers in the game. Girls like me, we call them tricks, right? So a lot of tricks are. They're truly looking for somebody just to give them some love, Mm-hmm. So I'm truly grateful for that. That helped me get out of life, stay out of life. I worked lots of odds and ends.
Did he know? I want to talk about this. Can we talk a little bit more about that guy?
Yeah.
Did he know that you were trying to get out of the life?
Yeah. And he didn't want me to go back.
Oh, God bless him. He probably was a blessing from God.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the book Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers?
No.
Oh my God, I couldn't put the book down. You should read that book.
Okay.
I think I have it. I'm going to give it to you before you leave today.
Okay.
You'll be like, wow. But he might have been like the male role in that book.
He definitely was. He definitely was a blessing. I don't know what happened to him. I've tried to look for him a couple of times. Basically, after he paid my car off, he gave me the title, and he probably knew I was seeing other men at that point in time. I had started dating a guy in prison. And yeah, I haven't heard from him since. And
We should thank,
you're out
well,
there. I thank you.
thank you because you helped
Thank you.
Jolene get out of the life.
I really, he used to tell me things. I'm like, in 5 years, I'm going to buy a house. He's like, more like 10. And, here we are 10 years later. I'm still working on that goal. But, yeah, so I worked lots of odds and end jobs. One of my first jobs was at a flower shop. I worked in sales. And then I started working in the nonprofit field. And I started working in homeless pop with unhoused women. And then became a human trafficking case manager. I've created curriculum. I've worked with the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation on the Blue campaign for the last 7 or 8 years. If you are flying on a plane and you see any curriculum in an airport, I've consulted and helped create that.
The signs on the bathroom stalls that say if you're a victim of human trafficking, here's the hotline number.
Yeah.
I always thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, so we've continued to consult and change those to be appropriate and cover both sex and labor and be culturally appropriate, as well as the videos that you see. Some on Delta, there's a video that's shown that's about trafficking and trafficking prevention. If you're being trafficked, this is how we could support you. I've consulted on that. I've worked with DCFS and probation with the youth empowerment events. And when my daughter started to go into high school, I really started realizing I didn't want my story to be her story. And I also realized telling my story at a church or somewhere for $150 was more traumatizing, and it cost me more than $150 or $400 or $300 or whatever they paid me to hear my trauma wasn't worth the recovery I had to put myself through afterwards.
Is this going to traumatize you talking here today?
No, I'm good. We're good.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
I was 2 or 3 years out the life.
Okay.
I was
You weren't where you are. You weren't
in a place to be telling my story to that capacity, I met somebody at a Blue campaign somewhere. And
What's the Blue campaign?
Blue campaign is basically the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation and their fight against human trafficking. So blue is the ribbon color that they use for human trafficking awareness. So it's essentially the human trafficking prevention color.
Okay.
I just remember, I think that was one of the last times I spoke. I spoke at the Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C., across from the White House. And I went into a little bit more detail about my childhood and my upbringing. And for some reason, and they were recording me live, and they posted this video on the internet. And I was so nervous. I was so sick. I just remember, I never want to do this again. I never want to tell my story in this capacity again. But I've been passionate about helping people. I know the things that were said to me, even being told, hey, your story traumatized people in this healing group. Maybe you should find somewhere else to go. The rejection and the hurt and the pain of being a 27-year-old woman that was a prostitute for 10 years and not having anywhere to go, not having anywhere to heal. There was one agency all the way out in Van Nuys, and I live on the border of Orange County and LA County. And I would drive all the way out there to get services just because there was a survivor that worked there. Her name was Diane, an amazing woman. She was probably 20, 30 years older than me, but was one of the first women that I ever met that had got out of the life. And I realized the importance of connecting with people and being around people that had my experiences. So as I was going to church, somebody invited me to come to this human trafficking meeting. I went to this human trafficking meeting, and they're talking about what they could do to help and heal the community. And I'm this is not for me. This is not. So I ended up leaving and writing them this long email telling them how offended I was that somebody brought me to this meeting. And they were just talking about untangible ways to help people in the community. And they said, well, Anne said, come and meet with me. So I met with her, and I ended up starting a support group in the church. And we did Bible studies, small group study. I at that point in time, I had been a part of some small group studies. And I found some people that accepted me for being a prostitute, and that I could use language like that and it didn't offend them. But then, like, somewhere along in the small group studies, I was like, oh, she's so vain. Oh, she's so this, like her. And I realized like that there's always going to be that, right? I remember going to the pastor and I'm like, this was said or this was done. He's like, well, of course, this is a church full of people and people are imperfect. And your job is to have a relationship with God. Those people will guide you in your relationship with God, but everybody's going to be imperfect. And that's the only thing that kept me from having a resentment of the church. Almost everybody I know has some type of trauma from church as a child, as an adult. And if we keep that in mind, like the church is filled with imperfect people,
broken people,
right? Like it's supposed to be a hospital for us. Like we're supposed to be able to go and say, hey, I'm a prostitute, and just like, let's lay hands and pray on you. And luckily I was able to find a group of women that literally laid hands on me during my spiritual attacks. And I can talk to you for hours and hours and hours about the process of me leaving life, but eventually I was able to start a ministry within the church that still runs today, that I have not had anything to do with for at least the last 5 years.
Wow. You started that ministry and it's going strong still.
Going strong still. They have a huge Christmas party and they have a huge retreat now. I think they're upwards of serving more than 50 girls each event. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing to see that, like, I think I came from a church that is purpose-driven. And part of purpose-driven means that you could start a ministry and walk away and that ministry will still stand if you do it right. And it's purpose-driven ministry, right? And so just to see that every year when I go back and I see that how many more women it's serving and how much it's grown it's a beautiful thing. But I had to retreat. I stopped serving in the community. I stopped identifying as a survivor. Probably about 2019. I Googled, I worked at shelters. I don't have a degree. I was always the best case manager there. At any place I worked in, I connected with the people because college didn't teach me how to serve people. God did. And my life experience did. So I feel like I was always the most impactful in the work that I did, although my paycheck never reflected that. There was no point for me to go back and get a degree to do case management when I already had experience doing case management and could still be employed. And it wouldn't make me any more money. So I would go to school for 4 years to get a bachelor's degree and still need to go get a master's degree to make more money. And school's always been a struggle for me. So I didn't do that. But I really felt the need to find a life outside of being a survivor of human trafficking and being a victim and identifying and almost like speaking this darkness over my life, right? Like I had to find, who am I outside of this, right? Who am I and how can I be a mother? Like at that point in time, my daughter was in 8th grade. She was about to go into high school. And I needed to do prevention in my household. The prevention and the work that I needed to do. My daughter was born to a pimp and a hoe. So statistically, according to her ACE score, which is the Adverse Childhood Experience, by her adolescence and her teenage years, she would have become trafficked. She would have become pregnant. She would have become in the juvenile justice system because that's what she was born into. And that's what statistics say. If you have a high ACE score, that's where you're going to end up.
70% of statistics are wrong. No,
and
my brother told me that joke. Okay, so listen, we are out of time, but we are not done because we're gonna have you continue on with this story in our next episode. So if you want to hear how Jolene fought back through the darkness and defeated the statistics with her daughter. That was a spoiler alert because I'm pretty confident that she has overcome the darkness. But I want all of you to hear the rest of this story. So thank you so much for what you've shared. I can't wait to hear the rest of this story, and we're going to do so on the next episode. So for now, we're going to wrap this up. But wow, that has been a lot to just even unpack for our listeners. I'm so glad that I had you on to hear this, because the fact that you were able to pull yourself out of the life and make a difference for all these other women who've been trafficked is really just a remarkable thing that you should be applauded for. And I'm so proud of you. Like, I get
Thank you.
tears thinking about it. Like, just the difference that you've made in so many other women's lives is incredible. And I know that God's had a huge role in that for you, but like, you really should be proud of yourself. And wow. Just another shining example of someone who's taken something dark in their life and you've become the light for other people. And that's what this message is all about here on Defeating the Darkness. Until we hear the next part 2 of Jolene's story. In the meantime, until we meet again, if you can't find the light, be the light like Jolene. We'll see you next time.